1993, Litchfield, New York. A church door closed behind a 12-year-old girl carrying posterboard, a songbook, and clear plastic sheets. Her bicycle tires whispered over the road's edge. Somewhere between the church and home, the afternoon lost its balance. Later, the bike would be found leaning against a tree as if placed there by someone who wanted it to be noticed. Her belongings would be discovered a few feet away, pushed into brush with deliberate care. No skid marks, no broken branches, no witnesses who heard anything break the quiet, only an absence that grew heavier as the light drained from the sky. This is the moment where everything should have stopped, but it did not. The town continued breathing, doors closed, supper cooled on tables, and somewhere inside that stillness, something irreversible had already occurred. The story of Sara Anne Wood does not begin with violence. It begins with quiet, with the sound of insects and a bicycle wheel turning once more before it never would again. If you stay with this account until the end, you may understand why some silences demand to be followed, and why those who document them never truly leave. By early evening on August 18, 1993, Sara Anne Wood had not returned home. The distance between Norwich Corners Christian Church and her house was short, a route she knew without thought. When the minutes began to stretch, her parents went looking. What they found was her bicycle propped against a tree near the roadside. Her posterboard, church songbook, and plastic transparencies were scattered into the brush nearby, not dropped, not forgotten, placed. Police arrived while the sky was still holding its color. The area was sealed. Neighbors were questioned. No one had seen a struggle. No one heard anything unusual. No vehicle description. No voices raised. Only the careful disorder of items left behind. By midnight, search teams were forming. Volunteers with flashlights moved through yards and ditches. K-29 units were deployed at dawn. The scent trail did not travel far before thinning, dissolving into the edge of the road where vehicles passed and erased what little remained. By the end of the first day, the case had already begun to harden into something colder. Investigators documented every measurement. Tire impressions were lifted from the shoulder of the road but yielded nothing distinct. The tree against which the bicycle rested showed no bark damage, no signs of collision. Her belongings were dry, unbroken, unmarked. The scene suggested restraint, not chaos. Whoever had taken Sara had done so quickly and with control. As days passed, the search expanded. Roadblocks were established. Helicopters combed fields and trees. Dive teams checked nearby water. Hundreds of tips poured in, most leading nowhere. The town was saturated with her image. Her smile hung in storefronts and school hallways. Her name moved from mouth to mouth like a prayer that refused to fade. Weeks later, the investigation still had no body, no suspect, no motive. Only an unresolved afternoon. In October 1990, 3 years earlier, a boy named James Bernardo had vanished in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. His body was found a month later, 180 miles away, in woods near Newfield, New York. That file would eventually be pulled from archives and placed quietly beside Sara's. The similarities were not yet spoken aloud. In January 1994, a girl named Rebecca in Pittsfield narrowly escaped an attempted abduction by a man with a gun. Her quick thinking and the description she provided led police to a local school janitor, Louis S. Lent Jr. The name would soon surface in connection with both James and Sara. When Lent was confronted, the structure of the case shifted. He confessed to James Bernardo's murder, then he claimed responsibility for Sara's disappearance. He drew a crude map pointing to a burial site near Rocket Lake in the Adirondack. The ground was frozen solid. Officials waited for spring. Pause here and consider what it means when a town has no answers, only coordinates drawn by a man whose words would later collapse. If you have a theory, if any detail strikes you as wrong or unfinished, leave it in the comments. Some investigations remain alive only because people refuse to stop examining them. In May 1994, the search began. Crews cut through forest. They dug where Lent indicated. For 1 month, the earth was turned over, measured, sifted. Nothing emerged. On June 1st, the operation was called off. Lent recanted. He said he would not reveal where Sara was buried because another body lay nearby that he did not want discovered. From that moment forward, the case existed in two forms, the legal one and the unresolved one. In April 1997, Lent was convicted of the murders of Sara Anne Wood and James Bernardo. He received 25 years to life. Yet Sara's remains were never found. Years would pass. New searches would be launched in 2023 and again in 2024. Acres of land examined, properties investigated. The evidence remains incomplete. Some cases close in courtrooms, others never close at all. Winter pressed in early across upstate New York that year. By the time investigators returned to Rocket Lake in January 1994, the forest had already sealed itself in frost and iron. The air around Lent's marked location felt brittle. Sound carried too far, then vanished. Shovels rang against frozen ground. Picks bounced. Soil would not give. The forest refused. Entry logs from that first attempt record no discoveries, but they do record anomalies. Search coordinators noted that compass bearings, fluctuated in the narrow ravine where Lent claimed he buried Sara, not wildly, not dramatically, but enough that multiple teams recalibrated twice before continuing. Radio transmissions between ground units and the command post suffered bursts of static. Whenever crews moved closer to the coordinates on Lent's map, voices thinned, then dropped. Instructions had to be repeated. Batteries drained faster than expected in the cold. Equipment technicians could not isolate a cause. When spring arrived and the thaw allowed excavation, the forest offered nothing, yet the disturbances continued. Dogs pulled off scent lines without reason. Bootprints appeared on soft soil where no one had walked. A ranger logged finding a single set of child-sized impressions along a ridge that search teams had not yet reached that morning. Windy raised them before casts could be taken. During the month-long dig in May, a technician working night shift documented a recurring interference pattern on the mobile radio console, steady hiss that only occurred when the transmitter faced the lake. When repositioned, the noise vanished. When turned back, it returned. No source was found. At one point, a searcher following flagged tape markers reported hearing a bicycle bell in the trees. There were no bicycles on site. By June 1st, the operation closed. Lent recanted. He claimed Sara was buried elsewhere. He claimed another body lay near her. He would say nothing more. In the years that followed, evidence contradictions accumulated. Witness timelines overlapped incorrectly. Vehicle sightings conflicted with traffic data. The map Lent drew no longer matched his latest statements. Yet certain elements, the controlled scene, the careful placement of Sara's belongings, the silence of the abduction remained consistent, unchanged by time. In 2023, when New York State Police reopened ground searches near the Dome hiking trail, modern equipment again experienced unexplained signal loss along specific tree lines. Drones briefly lost orientation. Footage recorded static frames over empty forest floor. Technicians attributed the failures to terrain and interference officially, but investigators, reviewing the old files, noted the pattern. The case of Sara Anne Wood does not present itself as chaos. It presents itself as restraint, as control, as something that never quite releases the space where it began. If this account has held your attention, leave a quiet mark of support, a single like so that this silence continues to be heard. Sara Anne Wood was 12 years old on August 18, 1993. She was 5 feet tall, 96 pounds, brown hair, born March 4, 1981. She rode her bicycle easily. She liked to help at church. She carried responsibilities small and ordinary. Posterboard, plastic sheets, a songbook meant for children's voices. The last people to see her that afternoon remember nothing unusual. No argument, no delay, no hesitation. She left the Norwich Corners Christian Church at approximately 2:30 p.m. following a route she had traveled countless times. The distance home was measured in minutes. When her parents found the bicycle that evening, the scene did not look violent. It looked arranged. The handlebar was turned slightly inward, as if placed by someone who wanted it to remain upright. Her belongings were in the bushes nearby, intact. No blood, no torn fabric, no damage. From that moment forward, Sara's life divided into two timelines, the one that existed before that ride, and the one the world has been trying to reconstruct ever since. Her parents became the permanent custodians of unanswered questions. They spoke publicly, constantly, even when nothing new could be said. They pushed for legislation, awareness, national coordination. Her name would later be attached to laws designed to protect missing children. A local NCMEC branch now bears her name. Every year, supporters ride bicycles to Washington, D.C., following the motion she never completed. In court, years later, Louis Lent would be convicted of a murder without her body ever being recovered. His confession, his map, his retraction, all remained part of the record. Yet Sara herself remains physically absent from it. In private statements, her family continued to describe her not as a case, not as a symbol, but as a child who left home with school supplies and never returned. They never stopped waiting. Her story is not defined by how it ended. It is defined by the fact that it has never fully ended at all. By the time the case entered its third decade, the record no longer behaved like a single investigation. It had become layers of contradictions stacked over one another, confessions that unraveled, coordinates that shifted, witness timelines that no longer aligned with physical movement data. Louis Lent's original map placed Sara's burial site near Rocket Lake. His later statements displaced it entirely. In court, prosecutors presented transportation windows that conflicted with toll records and gas receipts. Investigators documented vehicle sightings that could not be reconciled with the times recorded by independent witnesses. Nothing collapsed the conviction, but nothing truly settled either. When Lent later claimed another body was buried near Sara and that he would not disclose the location, officials quietly reopened older files. James Bernardo's murder already demonstrated Lent's ability to move a victim across state lines without detection. The potential for additional victims became an active line of inquiry. In November 2023, over 80 officers returned to the woods near the Dome hiking trail in 29 acres were searched. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed. Cadaver dogs worked overlapping grids. The operation yielded no public discovery, but internal logs recorded disturbed soil layers inconsistent with natural movement, far from established trails. Then in June 2024, a property in Lanesboro, Massachusetts was searched by a joint task force representing multiple agencies. Officials described the action only as related to unsolved crimes believed to involve Louis Lent. No remains were announced, no conclusions released. The evidence now exists in fragments, shifting statements, partial maps, suppressed reports, and modern searches that quietly contradict earlier conclusions. The case remains legally closed, but operationally unfinished. If any detail in this investigation feels misaligned, if any timeline fails to rest, mark it in the comments. Some cases remain open because the evidence refuses to settle. 3 decades after August 18, 1993, the road from Norwich Corners Christian Church to Haddicombe Road remains unchanged in shape, yet altered in weight. The trees are taller, the house is quieter. The space where Sara Anne Wood's bicycle once leaned carries no marker, no plaque, no visible scar, only the accumulated memory of what did not return. The official record says the case is solved. A conviction stands. A sentence is being served. And yet the most essential piece of evidence, Sara herself, remains absent from the world. The ground near Roquette Lake was opened and closed again. The forest near the Dome hiking trail was measured and released. A property in Lanesboro was examined and left silent. Each effort added movement without resolution. Somewhere within this unresolved geometry of maps, statements, and vanished time, the investigation still breathes quietly, patiently, waiting for the one detail that aligns the whole structure. If you choose to follow this case further, if you wish to remain present in the long echo of unfinished stories like Sara's, remain here, quietly, and subscribe, not for answers, but for the refusal to forget. There are cases that end in courtrooms, there are cases that end in cemeteries, and then there are cases like this that end nowhere at all. That the silence that followed her bicycle has never truly stopped.